Who are the highest floor prospects to be had outside the top 10 of the 2024 NHL Draft Class? We dig into that today on Locked On NHL Prospects.
You are Locked On NHL Prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, and welcome back to Locked On NHL Prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. On this podcast, we break down everything prospects related for you 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. And we are in the final sprint now, heading towards the draft day. And this is another episode in our top 5 player archetype series. And while most of the episodes in this series break down like specific player profiles, whether it be goal scorers or playmakers or offensive defensemen, which we've all already covered on the channel, today we're going to look at something a little bit different in that it is less an on-ice archetype and more of an off-ice one, in terms of a high floor prospect, a player that is very projectable to the NHL level, where there are really limited chances of this player not becoming an impact piece in some capacity at the NHL level. And to keep things interesting for this episode, we are restricting ourselves to players that are not projected to go inside the top 10 of the 2024 NHL Draft Class, because otherwise we'd be looking at about 10 players that are projected to go top 10 in this episode, which would be a little bit boring. So instead, we're going to dig a little bit deep. Most of the players in today's episode have significant chances of being picked inside the first round, but not all of them will be. A few of them will fall into the second round in all likelihood on draft day. But before we jump into today's episode, if you're watching on YouTube, please feel free to like, subscribe, leave us a comment with which players would have made your list for the high floor players eligible for this draft class. And let us know if you have any suggestions for topics for videos. We're going to have a long off season, and having some more ideas for episodes in the bank is always a great help. So let us start here straight off with the honorable mentions. I've selected 5 players that are in the HM category here, and all of them could have contended for the 5th spot, in all honesty, in the actual top 5 ranking. Let's start off here with Linus Eriksson. He was the captain for Team Sweden at the U18 World Championships and played most of the season against professional competition for Djurgården at the Hockey Allsvenskan level. He is a 6-foot, 185-pound left shot centerman who played 29 games in Hockey Allsvenskan this season, logging 3 goals and 11 points. And he also played some postseason games down the stretch for Djurgården, where he put up 4 goals, no assists, through 12 playoff games. And at the J20 level, he put up 5 goals and 21 points through 25 games. So he is not an offensive dynamo in terms of production. At the U18 World Championship, he went a point a game with a single goal and 6 assists for 7 points in just as many games. But the real value with this player comes in everything else he does beyond the production. He's a very intelligent player who's consistently positioned well in all 3 zones and on both sides of the puck. He's reliable defensively. He applies significant pressure. He can win important faceoffs. He gets to the net front. He gets to the dirty areas. He's a good distributor and facilitator and line connector for his teammates. So while he does not project as a top 6 offensive dynamo at the NHL level, he's exactly the kind of player that you want on your team in your bottom 6 in a deep playoff run, because he is so reliable and just does so many of the small things so well. So don't be surprised if he ends up being a first round selection on draft day, but if he falls to the second round, that is great value for whichever team snaps him up. Next up, we have Andrew Basha, a really fun player. He plays with a big motor. He's constantly keeping his feet moving, and he's a really good checking forward as well. But this season, he really was able to build out his playmaking game to complement that high motor checking style that he really refined at the WHL level. He is a 6 foot, 185-pound left shot winger, and for the Medicine Hat Tigers team, a stacked team this season. He scored 30 goals, added 55 assists for 85 points through 63 games. Excellent production, but it's how he produces that is just so projectable. He plays with that intensity. He gets to the dirty areas. He plays with pace. He makes quick split-second decisions when he's under pressure. He keeps his feet moving to not be restricted to a single area on the perimeter. He's constantly trying to access the middle of the ice. He's a beast in transition, constantly switching lanes, using his feet and his hands in combination, as well as being able to use his line mates to access the offensive zone. And defensively, he uses his intensity and high motor to apply pressure. A very projectable player with some top six upside to boot, but the fallback game with him in a checking role is also just so refined. Next up, we have another player that we like a lot here on the podcast and over at Dobber Prospects, Jett Luchanko of the Guelph Storm in the OHL. He is a right shot centerman, 5'11", 183. He's an August 21st birthday in 2006, so very young for the draft class. And in 68 games for Guelph, he scored 20 goals and 74 points. Production was good. He's a very athletic player. He plays with intensity. He's a bit pesky in the offensive zone, and he's a really good playmaker. He plays with pace. He's so mobile in all four directions, and that intensity permeates his offensive game. He was playing a really effective third-line checking role for Team Canada at the U18 World Championships, where he went a point a game with 2 goals and 7 points in just as many games on the road to a gold medal victory. And he just plays a game that NHL scouts are going to adore. He will be picked in the first round. I'm almost certain of it. And he will be a really versatile, potential middle six player for a really long time at the NHL level. Then we have Emil Hemming, the Finnish goal scorer who was really able to build out his game and build up a really good checking game this season while playing professional hockey for TPS in Liga, where he played 40 games, scored 7 goals and 11 points. The production wasn't exactly on the same level of a Consta Hellenius, for instance, but through 13 U20 games, he scored 11 goals and 18 points. The offensive upside is real with this player. Again, very young for the draft class. He's a late June 06 birthday. He's a 6'2", 194-pound right shot right winger. And that combination of goal scoring upside, mobility, good handling skill, underrated playmaking ability and passing skill, with that intensity and that physicality and that desire to get implicated on both sides of the puck in all zones makes him a really intriguing, high floor, potentially even high upside swing in the first round on draft day. He's not going to last long into the 20s. He might even go inside the top 15 range if the team is really bullish on him. And he's a player I've been growing on all season long. Next up, for the final honorable mention, one of my personal favorites, Dominik Bodang, the 6'3" right shot defenseman who's 190 pounds and played most of the season in the SHL against excellent competition with the Malmö Redhawks, playing 33 games, logging a goal, 3 assists for 4 points. And the offensive impact is not what you're drafting this player for. You're drafting him because he's really mobile, really physical, has a very refined sense of timing in his defensive aggression and implications. He shuts down the rush really, really well on that right side. And he's a very capable breakout passer. He always keeps a simple play in his back pocket when he needs it, but he always does scan for those stretch passes, for those real breakout passes to launch quick counterattacks. And he's quite composed under pressure most of the time. The asterisk on that is that his handling ability is relatively subpar, and he does not trust it at all to solve problems for him, with good reason, against SHL competition. So that'd be one area that he needs to refine. But his defensive game, his breakout game are already so refined at this stage. I don't really see a world where he doesn't at least become a capable and physical and mobile number 6 defenseman. And I think there's significant second pairing upside with this player. But to start off our top 5, we have Cole Beaudoin, one of our absolute favorites here on the podcast. Does not have the highest upside in the world, but he is just so likable and so projectable to the NHL level. We raved about him for half an hour in a full scouting report that is up on the channel, so go check that out if you haven't yet. He is a 6'2", 201-pound left shot centerman playing for the Barrie Colts in the OHL. Even wore an A on his jersey as a draft eligible, and through 67 games, he logged 28 goals and 62 points, so just under a point a game there for Beaudoin. But he plays with intensity. He plays with intelligence. He's a refined defensive player. He wins important faceoffs. He gets implicated physically. He plays within defensive structures really, really well. And the same can be said in the offensive zone. He knows his role, and he knows what he's best at. He's a very capable net front guy. He gets to the dirty areas. He uses his physicality, his intensity, and his strength to really plant himself right at the net front. And this is a player who has a really high stride rate, which compensates for subpar stride mechanics. He's not a great puck handler, but he doesn't need to be. He keeps his puck touches short. He knows what he's most effective at. It's a real meat and potato style that he plays that style so very well. And he's going to be a bottom six NHLer for a really long time. And I'd be shocked if he fell to the second round for those reasons. There's even some limited second line upside with this player if you're able to give him two dynamic wingers to do a lot of that transition work for him and that on-puck work for him. I think that he has the intelligence, the tools, and that ability to play so reliably within the system to be a solid second-line center. Again, in the right system with the right line mates. So not like a slam dunk player in that projection, but a really likable player nonetheless. But we're going to jump in with our number 4 and number 3 ranked high floor players that are likely going to be available outside the top 10 in the next segment. But before that, a quick word from our sponsors here at Locked On NHL Prospects. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophies also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers to roof racks to LED headlights, exhaust kits, and far more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what it is that you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, which is available to U.S. customers only, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. Alrighty, so let's kick off the second segment with a player who is becoming one of the favorites for a lot of scouts that I've been talking to, and that is Stian Solberg. He's a left shot Norwegian defenseman who's played excellently at the international stage. He's 6'2", 201 pounds, and he's been playing in the Norwegian Professional League all season long with Vålerenga, and he's been logging massive minutes against professional competition. Definitely not the strongest pro league in the world, but still, he's been playing upwards of 25 minutes a night against adults, which is not to be understated. And he played an excellent tournament at the World Junior Championships back in December and January. He was Norway's big minute muncher. He's playing 30 plus minutes a night in that tournament, and he logged a goal and an assist there. In the league, he's played 42 games, 5 goals, 15 points, pretty solid production. And he's been playing at the World Championships for Norway here as well, where he's played, at the time of recording, 7 games, logging 2 goals, 1 assist with 3 points. And he is moving over to the SHL next season to play with Färjestad BK. So he'll be making a big leap in competition next year. And this is a player who combines high floor and high upside in a really interesting way. There's definitely a chance he ends up going top 15, top 20 on draft day. potential to be a real late riser here with that international performance at the World Championships. And there's so much to like in his profile. He plays with utter violence. He loves to play with physicality. He never holds back when he has the option to throw a hit, but he doesn't really go hit chasing either. And that's a fine line to balance, but he's been finding a pretty good way of doing that so far this season. His on-puck game is also really interesting. He's a really good four-way skater in all four directions. He's a really good puck handler. The flashes of puck handling that he's been able to show at times this season have been superb. There's definitely a lot of still like a runway to grow as a puck handler and an on-puck player, which is really exciting for whichever development staff gets to work with him long-term. And beyond that, his defensive implications are really solid and reliable and projectable. He shuts down the rush with his physicality and his mobility. Against the cycle, he's constantly clearing the net front. He knows his role. He does it quite well. There's still some raw habits in his on-puck game specifically. He can get a little bit panicky under pressure, especially when he's taking on the role of a breakout passer rather than a carrier up the ice. And in the offensive zone, there's also some more runway to develop with him. He has a wicked booming shot that he can still use a bit more regularly and from perhaps more dangerous locations in the offensive zone rather than just from the blue line. And yeah, I think that there's like significant top four upside with this player, but with that physicality, the mobility, and that intuition in when to take risks defensively, I don't really see a world where he does not turn into a bottom pairing physical force that is a fan favorite and just very entertaining on the ice. So he is here at number 4 on our list. But next up, we have Liam Greentree, the captain of the Windsor Spitfires in the OHL. One of the smarter and more adaptable players to be had outside the top 10 of this draft class. He played 64 games for a very, very weak Windsor team, scoring 36 goals and 90 points, leading all OHL draft eligibles in points and in goals, and 6 behind the point lead, which is held by Zane Perek. And just a really fantastic draft year for Liam Greentree, who was a bit of a raw shooter coming into this season, but really diversified his offensive game, implementing a lot more dynamism in his puck handling specifically, and also a lot more willingness in creating play for his line mates. Despite not having the strongest support, his playmaking game grew a ton this season. His skating ability is certainly something that limits him a little bit. He's not overly mobile or has the quickest stride rate. The stride mechanics definitely need some work as well. But he's so intelligent and he's positionally sound in all 3 zones and on both sides of the puck, which compensates for that lack of mobility really nicely. So while he may fall outside that top 15 range because of mobility, a team beyond there is going to get a really, really good player that brings a ton of leadership, both on and off the ice, who can score important goals, who can create for his line mates, and has a real penchant for creating some dynamic and highlight reel goals when he wants to. The defensive impact is something that's still growing, but he has the tools and the intelligence to be an impactful player in the defensive zone. And there is some real second line upside with this player. He could be even perhaps a complementary winger on a top line if he really hits. But in terms of likelihood, we'd be projecting him more as a middle 6 Swiss Army knife who can play in all 3 zones, play a variety of roles. Wherever his team needs him, he will be there. And that is something really exciting to be able to add outside that top 15 range of the NHL draft class. But that wraps up the second segment for the episode, and we'll be right back for the final segment looking at our top 2 players here, Igor Chernyshov and Michael Brandsegg-Nygård, who are so projectable and so exciting for slightly different reasons, though they are both power wingers. And we'll get right into that after these messages from our sponsors here at Locked On NHL Prospects. It's playoff time in the NBA and NHL. Baseball's in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every game. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets, guaranteed. That's $150, win or lose. Bet on everything from slap shots to slam dunks to home runs, all on an app that's safe, secure, and easy to use. You can also spend those bonus bucks on anything ranging from spreads to player props to over and unders and even same game parlays, which are always my personal favorites, especially when I'm attending an event live. If you need anything to make the action all the more exciting when you're already attending a game, it's a same game parlay where you hand select a couple stats to stake your bet on. What are you waiting for? Visit fanduel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Alrighty, so let's dig into Igor Chernishov's game here. He's a player I'm a very big fan of, I think more so than most public scouts that are out there. He's a 6'2", 196-pound right shot left winger who played a bunch of minutes in the KHL this season with Dynamo Moscow. He played 34 games, mainly playing like bottom 6 minutes off from the fourth line, but still seeing some third line opportunities here and there, where he scored 3 goals and 1 assist for 4 points. Production was not outstanding here, but we're going to dig into why and also why he projects as a really capable goal scorer at the NHL level, despite the measly point totals here this season. He also played in the MHL this season for 22 games, scoring 13 goals, adding 15 assists for 28 points. You can see a bit more of that foundation of dynamism and offensive ability in those numbers. But at the KHL level this season, he was tasked primarily, overwhelmingly, with a defensive role. He was a real shutdown winger for Dynamo Moscow, and he played that role to a T. He was a fantastic defensive forward this season, completely shutting down play in like the neutral zone and in the defensive zone. He's a capable back checker. He's really mobile, a very good puck handler, but he uses that comfort with his stick to also get implicated in the defensive zone with active stick work, constantly getting his stick into passing lanes and applying significant pressure. And the timing behind his pressure is also quite polished already. Beyond that defensive zone impact, he's also really capable in transition. He plays with pace. He makes quick decisions under pressure. He uses his physicality, mobility, and handling in combination to help his team break out of the defensive zone. He's often a hold-up player who waits for his linemates to break out of the defensive zone into the neutral zone, and he pounces that counterattack with a quick pass to a line mate. He gets into the offensive zone, plays with that same pace and physicality and intensity. He gets to the high danger scoring areas. He's a really good goal scorer. He has a wicked shot, really heavy release, pinpoint accuracy behind it as well. He hit a bunch of posts at the KHL level this season and deserved a couple more goals than he ended up getting credit for. But I still do believe that this is one of the better goal scorers in terms of NHL projections that is to be had at the NHL level. He plays such a modern European power forward style of game. Think in terms of mold, not projection. Players like Mikko Rantanen and Juraj Slafkovsky who are able to really blend physicality, violence, slick handling skill, deception, and high-end offensive skill, whether it be their handling or their goal scoring. And Chernishov's playmaking game is a lot more of a work in progress at this stage than it was with either of the two aforementioned players, and he's not going to be picked in the top 10 as a result, but it has been growing this season, to be fair. But this will allow telegraphing of plays, even on like 2-on-1 rushes. He telegraphs a pass at times and makes it very simple for the defender to block the opportunity. But as a goal scorer, he has a wicked sense of intuition. He can read goaltenders really well. He can deceive shooting in one direction before changing the angle of release on his shot to go the other way. He can hold on to pucks longer than expected to create those openings for himself. And if he's able to take the step in integrating playmaking ability into that deception he already has as a goal scorer, then we're going to see that real high-end top 6 upside start to hit. But even so, I think this is a player with massive middle 6 upside, And even then, without that fourth line upside, or fourth line floor, because he is so adaptable, he gets involved in all three zones. He's so versatile in how he can impact the game. And I was really happy with this progression throughout the season as well. So there's a ton to like with this player. And whenever I get the opportunity to rave a little bit about him and his NHL projection, I pounce on it, which is why he finds himself here at number 2. But that being said, there's no other player that was really contending for the number 1 slot, and that is Michael Brandsegg-Nygård. The most NHL-ready player to be had in this draft class, not named Macklin Celebrini. He is a 6'1", 198-pound right shot winger who played this entire season in Hockey Allsvenskan with Mora IK. Played 7 games at the J20 level where he completely dominated, scoring 5 goals and 12 points. But in the 41 games against professional competition, he logged 8 goals, 18 points, and most of that came in the back half of the season. He really ramped up his production as the year went on. And that was also seen in his international appearances. He was the leading offensive piece for Team Norway at the World Junior Championships, and where he scored 3 goals, added 2 assists for 5 points in as many games. And he's been really getting some good ice time at the World Championships with the men's team, playing 7 games, logging 3 goals and 2 assists for 5 points. So there are 2 Norwegians that are in our top 5, which was perhaps not expected at the beginning of this season here in terms of projectable and NHL-ready type of players. But Michael Brandsegg-Nygård is the premier defensive forward in this entire draft class. He reads play incredibly well. He is an elite level forechecker. He's an elite level back checker, high-end stick work. He gets involved physically, applies intense pressure, constantly creates turnovers and pounces on counterattacks, plays the game in such a projectable way that NHL teams should be salivating over. And I'm a little bit surprised that he isn't higher up projected draft boards than he is at this stage, not even really finding himself too much in the top 15 conversation among those Bob McKenzie boards that are out there in terms of being linked with NHL scouts. But I am very high on this player. I've watched him a bunch this season. I love the way he impacts a hockey game in every single way he possibly can. In the neutral zone, in the defensive zone, in the offensive zone, it does not matter. He's a really good skater, especially in the straight line. He's a powerful player. He protects the puck really well. His handling skill has taken a couple steps up over the course of this season. He scored some absolutely gorgeous goals, dangling around professional competition, professional defenders, and before putting the puck in the back of the net with a really heavy release. He can score from medium to long range, but he also scores a lot of his goals in tight, in the dirty areas, pouncing on rebounds and loose pucks. He's an avid forechecker and creates very quickly when he wins possession down low in the offensive zone. He can score off the rush, and that playmaking game is also taking a couple steps this season. I wouldn't call him a raw, true playmaker. He's more of a distributor and perhaps a link-up player, but he uses his teammates really well, and he's able to integrate some really interesting passing patterns in his rushes. Beyond just being a really good puck protector that can do the work himself, he's not selfish at all in the offensive zone. And there's just so much to like here. I see a player that could be a complimentary first liner if he really hits, and has a really high chance of being a reliable Swiss Army knife type of second line player. And even if that upside doesn't hit, you're getting a valuable third line guy. So there's a ton to like in this player. I think the upside is a lot higher than many other people are projecting it to be. And beyond that, I fully agree that the floor is tremendously high, which is why he is here at number 1 on our top high floor prospects that are to be found outside the top 10 range of the 2024 NHL draft class. And I'm very excited to see which team ends up taking the big swing or bunt, depending on your perspective here, I guess. I am more of the mind that it is a swing, and a safer swing at that, to take on draft day. But I'm curious to see which team ends up making that choice. But that wraps up this episode of the Locked On NHL podcast. Please, if you're watching on YouTube, leave a like, leave a comment below letting us know what you thought of this episode and any suggestions that you have for topics or things to cover in the future. And let us know what your ranking for these players would have looked like. And if you're listening on your favorite podcasting platform, make sure to make us your first listen of the day. For your second listen of the day, head over to Locked On Sports Today, where they have a 24-hour day constant stream with all the updates you could possibly want from all around the sporting world. But that wraps up this episode. I'm Sebastian Hyde, the head scout over at Dobber Prospects, typically joined by my co-host, Hadi Kalikesh, who is the North American Director of Scouting at Dobber Prospects as well. And that wraps up this show, and we hope you tune back in next time.